Hello everybody and welcome back to my sewing room. If you're new, my name's Diane and I like to share all the things I've been doing in my sewing room that are connected with quilt making. If this is the second part of, I think it's going to be a 4-part series called Spring Clean, and I decided to make these little group of videos because I had fallen out of love with making quilts. There's a very good reason why, and I look back and I think, wow, how did that happen? But it did, and it might happen to you, even though you might think like I did that it would definitely never could, but it did. And so these 4 little videos show you what I did when I was out of love with quilting and how I found my way back. I am working on a quilt at the moment, which I am really enjoying doing, but I never thought I'd be doing things like this again at one point. So one of the reasons why I stopped making quilts was because I suddenly had a lot less time, and I thought I would come in and work on tidying up the small pieces of fabric, because I thought that I might be giving away all of my bigger pieces of fabric, and I thought that nobody would want the smaller pieces that I had been storing. And so I thought I would start off by going through my containers where there were smaller pieces and strip pieces, and then I started making squares within squares. And when I wasn't in my sewing room making those small squares, I spent some time being physical, not a thing I'm used to, in the garden. I needed to just work out some energy, so being outside is always good for us, and so I was in the garden and doing lots of work in the garden. And there were other times where I was in a different environment and I couldn't make a mess. I could have taken, I suppose, smaller pieces of fabric with me and did some hand sewing or English paper piecing using up these small pieces. But I didn't really want to sort of contaminate the environment I was in with small threads of cotton. And so I thought, I've got to do something. I'll go mad if I'm just sitting around. And so I went online on Amazon and I bought myself one of these little sewing kits. It's a half cross, half stitch, and everything was in the box. It was only about £21 in total, and everything you needed was in there. The only thing I needed to add was the pillow form at the end. So I took that with me while I was out of my room. And then when I came back and started sorting through again, I came across a little plastic wallet. And in this plastic wallet, there were some 3-inch squares in that sort of dusky rose fabric, and also some squares within squares. Now, I'm not sure how long those squares were in that plastic wallet for. It'd been quite a while, and I couldn't really remember what I wanted to do with the design. But I had put in this little slip of paper, and on that paper there was obviously a design in my mind when I wrote it down, but I don't know what I was thinking at the time. I mean, it means nothing at all to me when I'm looking at it now. But if you'd have seen last week's video, you'll have seen that I did piece together a backing, and it had that fabric on. And so I knew that I had that in my backing box. And so I thought, well, I'll use those squares, I'll think of a design, and I'll make a quilt top for it. And so I just scribbled out an idea on this little scrap of paper again. I don't know what I was thinking. You can see in that bottom corner, I sort of penciled in an Irish chain, and then it stopped again. I just put it all away, left it again for a while, and then unexpectedly I did have a little bit more time. This is sometimes how life goes, isn't it? Things, you just can't plan for anything. But I did find that I had a few days, and I had been out and bought a bargain. You can see this beautiful little cotton. They were cotton curtains, so I'd bought those in one of our local charity shops, and I'd washed those, ironed those. They were also in the backing box, and so I thought I could put all of those squares together with this little design, and that's what I did. I made some little 9 patches and I arranged them on my design board in an Irish chain. And I suppose really the next step would be to have just taken squares of that lovely white fabric with a little purple flower on and just fill in the gaps. However, my mission was to get rid of all of the tiny little pieces of fabric that I had and I'd pre-cut, including 3-inch squares. And so it's quite a simple idea. Once the Irish chain was up on the design board, instead of using this lovely fabric to fill in the gaps, I thought I would use all of the pre-cut fabrics I had in my containers that were pinks or reds. I thought I'd put a little yellow block in the centre and it would look like a little flower. That was the idea. I just wanted to use up all the smaller pieces, and I thought the bigger pieces would come in useful for backings on another quilt. But I wasn't convinced that it would look okay within that Irish chain, and so I just made a couple to start with. And I thought they looked quite pretty, so I continued and made all of the blocks that would fit in. And once I'd completed that, I just put a little border of that white background around the edge. And then I searched in my box, the backing box, for that piece of fabric. And as you can see, it was made up with those little squares within squares, and it had a little sashing in of that dusky rose. But if you look at the back of this finished quilt, you'll see that I had added some more fabric. When I was piecing all the bits and scraps that were in the backing box, I must have gone back and just added all the bits that went with that fabric around the edge of that dusky rose. And so that now was quite a bigger piece of backing than I thought I had originally, and so I just needed to extend the front of this quilt top again, and so I put a little edging, a little border of the pink fabric around that. And if you've seen my recent videos, you'll see that, you know, my mind was all over the place, and really I had no idea what I was doing. It was like someone else had visited the room when I went back in, but it was me, and I had altered the back of that. But I think that looks quite nice with that pink on, and so I just brought the back to the front, self-binding again, and finished that quilt. But I think it's turned out okay. I think that's a pretty looking quilt. I've called that one Dusky Rose. It's been washed and it's in my cupboard, ready for when I get a minute to pop over to Project Linus and take the others. There are 4 that I've completed so far, and so I will find time to get those off. And I have since finished Mr. Fox. It's great because the zip is already in the back. The only thing I did need to get extra, apart from the pillar form, was to get some interfacing, and I put some interfacing on the back of the stitches. But actually it's quite a firm cushion. You can sit on it if you want to, but I use it in the lower part of my back, and it lives on our sofa, and it's quite a comfortable little thing. So that's another thing that I made when I didn't love quilting anymore. But I was happy with this Dusky Rose quilt, and I'm sure someone somewhere will really like it. And so next week I will show you the next quilt that I made when I didn't want to quilt anymore. I was quite productive for someone that doesn't want to quilt anymore. And that's it for this week. So thank you very much for your company again, and please excuse all the madness and the chaos and everything. I'm sure that the videos will get a little bit better once I've worked my way through all of this detritus. Anyway, thanks for watching and I'll see you again soon. Bye.